indicted on 37 federal counts of felony charges. Special counsel Jack Smith releasing the 49-page indictment, saying the president mishandled classified documents, including some involving sensitive nuclear programs and others detailing potential U.S. vulnerabilities to military attack. Well, there is a national security concern about the top secret documents discovered at Mar-a-Lago. Political professor Bill Muck from North Central College joins us now to talk about the implications if these documents fell into the wrong hands. Professor, thanks for joining us.
Always good to be with you.
First of all, this is the first time a former president of the U.S. has been indicted on federal charges. That alone is, as I've heard, jaw-dropping.
Absolutely. We're looking at a historic moment here, right? So we have the investigation in New York, but this is something entirely different. And it's a big deal. And it's when you think about the history of the country, and it's really a watershed moment. And I think it's important for the country to sit back and say that this is an important time to think about, where the country is moving and where, and in what way law matters. And does law matter equally for all individuals?
49 pages. From what I understand, pretty easy to read. There are recordings of him talking to an aide saying if he was still president, he could declassify these documents, but I'm not president anymore, so oh well, ha 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 ha. These are major, major documents. What if they had gotten into the wrong hands? He had them stored in his shower. He had them stored in the ballrooms. There were weddings and things like that. What if they had gotten into the wrong hands? What would that have meant for national security?
It's an extraordinary development. I think we can't assume that they didn't necessarily get into wrong hands, right? So you're absolutely right. As the indictment laid out today, Trump had those documents in the ballroom, in a shower. They were all over the place, in storage rooms, and you have thousands of people coming through this facility. So I don't think we can assume that they weren't necessarily accessed, right? So when you think about, we've all watched spy movies, and we see the extent to which other states go to try to gather secrets on other countries, and this makes it so much easier. I mean, there's a reason that we have security clearance. There's a reason that we vet individuals who get access to that information and how we store that information. So absolutely, it is a national security issue. It is a crisis, and the government is I think trying to assess how big of a deal this is. So, and that doesn't even really answer your question of what happens if they got into the wrong hands. It could be traumatic, and we will have to worry about this over, I'd say, the next 10 years if somebody did in fact find these documents.
And this man is running for president again. So what could that mean?
Well, that's right, and I think that it should. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just said, what could that mean? I mean, if he's found guilty, especially, I mean, he's, kind of willy-nilly, loosey-goosey with the documents.
We have to remember this individual, the president, is the commander in chief. They are the individual that we are trusting to make national security decisions for us. And when you think about an individual who is so cavalier in terms of allowing those documents, well, first of all, taking those documents and then allowing them to be open and access documents that talked about nuclear secrets, talked about plans of attacking other countries. It is a national security threat to have those documents compromised. And I think the country has to weigh whether somebody like that should be granted another term in office, right? It is a very, very serious threat. And individuals who work in this field have been very, very troubled, both by the holding of those documents and secondly, how they were held, right? That they were taken and the ways in which that they were not held securely.
If he is not found guilty, though, what does that mean moving forward as far as keeping these documents classified? What if someone else gets into office and feels that they can be cavalier about it?
Well, I think that's such an important point. And I think that's why Jack Smith felt that there had to be a prosecution here. So what you've heard from the reporting and leaks coming out is that once they heard him talking about this and that he knew better, right? So the intent is so important and the willingness to do this. You're setting a precedent. So if the government, if the Department of Justice doesn't prosecute a case like this, it means that other presidents can do the same. And it sets a precedent for not taking these documents and intelligence seriously. So I think that for all those reasons, right, they absolutely have to pursue this case. And whether or not he's found guilty or not, I think the fact is that you have to try to hold individuals accountable. And the reality is that this happens all of the time. It's just not usually the president, right? So individuals who take documents, who are in possession of documents they're not supposed to have, are held accountable.
We should say also that President Biden had some documents found, and so did Vice President Pence. There were documents found. All right. Thank you, political professor Bill Muck from North Central College. Always nice to get your insight on things.
Thanks for having me.